Hello, it's been a while. I'll get to that in a minute. But this is a PlayStation 5, and I want to talk about it. In my opinion, having this since launch, this has probably been one of the worst consoles I've had. Not because the games on it are bad or the console itself is bad. It's just because I feel like I was sort of ripped off for a while buying this thing. Because it has like no exclusives. And what do I mean by that? When the PS5 launched, it was really hard to get your hands on it. I got lucky. They did a surprise launch for pre-orders, and I was able to get one at GameStop as a bundle, which I was sort of upset about. But to tell you the truth, I probably would have bought everything in that bundle except for a game called Brawl Stars, which was like a really weird title. But they canceled the physical copy of it for me, and they gave me the money back. So the only things I ended up buying extra were another controller and Spider-Man Miles Morales, which I was going to buy anyway, and I probably need another controller. So honestly, perfectly fine with that situation. I got it, and I basically to this day barely use this thing because honestly I don't find much of a reason to. I'm going to talk about some things I like about the PS5 first. First of all, I do like that when it launched, a lot of PS4 games were automatically, given, or not automatically, but they were given PS5 versions. And honestly, that was cool because that means when the console launched, I automatically had like a fair amount of PS5 games that weren't like, like PS4 Pro games running a little bit better. They were proper PS5 games, running like as a PS5 game, and I didn't have to pay anything for them. So for example, Mortal Kombat 11 pretty early on was, optimized for PlayStation 5. There's a PlayStation 5 version, and all I had to do was put the disc in, and it was like, oh, Mortal Kombat 11, just download it, and that was cool. Now, what does sort of suck about Sony's approach to doing this compared to Microsoft's smart delivery is that for some reason, this is the PS4 game. If I insert the PS4 game, it still shows up as a PS4 game, and oftentimes it'll show up as both the PS4 game and the PS5 game, and you have to manually select the PS5 version. Why? Why would I want? I unless there's some like save file configuration, I don't know why you would want to play the PS4 version if you can play the PS5 version for free. That does get me to a second thing that I do not like that Sony does compared to Microsoft, is that sometimes they will charge you, even if you have the physical copy, like this. Like let's say we'll use this one in. If you have the physical copy of this game, and you put it in, they'll charge you like $10 to get the PS5 version. You can still play the PS4 version, but they'll charge you like $10 to get the PS5 version, which to me is just ridiculous. And initially they didn't do that. Like it was an option, but I don't really recall anyone doing that. Call of Duty, I remember, had like the cross-gen bundle where it had like, there was like an extra $10, you got both. But like Sony games after a while, I think started doing it. Another thing that was like really stupid, I remember, is if you wanted to get, I'm gonna go off track a bit in this video. I'm not super prepared, but if you wanted to get the Spider-Man remastered, you had to buy Spider-Man Miles Morales. Actually, I'll pull that out here. You had to buy Spider-Man Miles Morales, but you could not get the physical version. You had to get like the digital deluxe edition, which was like so stupid. You couldn't buy Spider-Man remastered separately. It was so stupid. Besides some of the very valid nitpicks, in my opinion, I do like that when the PS5 launched, you did immediately have some PlayStation 5 games because you had PS4 games. That was cool. And honestly, at launch, the demo game Astro's Playroom, it's still really fun. I actually beat every single thing in that game. I have every single trophy in that game. I have every single like of the frickin' like this is the most jank setup I've probably ever used for a YouTube video, and that's saying something. But the game that's included with the PS5, Astro's Playroom, I think does a really good job of showing the PS5 and also just being a fun game, and it's included. So It looks pretty good. It plays pretty good. And in my opinion, it shows you how to use, it shows the controller. And speaking of the controller, that is a Nintendo Switch controller. The controller. This is probably one of the best parts of this console. It's not the most comfortable controller in the world. It's not uncomfortable by any means necessarily, but what I would say, it's not the most comfortable, but it's one of the coolest controllers in the world. So it has the, I don't know what they're gonna, I can't remember what they call it, but it basically has HD rumble from the Nintendo Switch controllers, but like cooked up to 11, or well, not kicked up to 11, but enhanced version of it, where it doesn't just have 2 vibration motors. You can like sort of feel the differences. But my favorite thing, actually, I'd say about the PS5 controller is the triggers, and how they can like add some resistance to the triggers to make them feel different in different games, which is awesome. You can have like recoil in like different shooting games, which I think is just freaking awesome. And having a built-in microphone also is really nice. So if you don't have a microphone to chat with, you have one built in. I haven't really had to use it, but it is a nice feature. The only thing I don't get is it has the touchpad still, which is awesome, but I think that's only because PS4 had it, but barely any PS4 games had it. But to tell you the truth, I do like that it does have it again. There's a speaker in here. I don't have a PS4 controller right now, but the PS4 controller also has a speaker, but no one ever talked about it. But for some freaking reason, they act like this is a new feature of the speaker. I don't know why they're doing that, or at the time they did that. The speaker sounds better, but I remember that like before, no games use the PS4 speaker, but for some reason, like a lot of games use the PS5 controller speaker, so I don't know why. But honestly, yeah, even though the controller is kind of expensive, and at least on these versions, the launch versions, the battery life is terrible. It's like 5 hours. It's really not good. These controllers are dead all the time. It's a really good controller, and I think honestly, it's one of the best features of this console. Now, this is where I'm going to start to get into the more negative sides. I was starting talking about the negative sides, but the joke about the PS5 having no games, yeah, that's true. But it's not true in the fact that it has no games. It's just, it doesn't really have any games that I couldn't get from somewhere else. I'm willing to say if the games are on PC, that's fine. And the reason is because while PC is becoming more and more mainstream, it still is not like consoles in the terms of where parents are going to buy it for their kids. Parents are probably not very often going to buy gaming PCs for their kids unless they themselves are gamers. They're probably just going to be like, okay, Timmy, do you want the Xbox One, or sorry, the Xbox Series X, or do you want the PS5? And I feel like a lot of them are going to go with the PS5. I'll talk about that in a minute. But that's where it is. So, there's some games that Sony's even putting on PC, but, usually they wait a little bit to do it, like a year or two, which I think is fair. And I think the reason they do it is they tend to put PlayStation exclusive games on PC a little bit before the sequel to the same games comes out on PlayStation 5. And the reason I believe they do that is I believe they're going to get people to play the game on PC, and then they know they have to wait a little bit to get that game on PC again, but they like it, so they go out and buy a PS5, and then they play the sequel on PS5, which it's a pretty smart business move, I cannot lie. But that being said, if you don't, if you have some patience, it's coming out on PC, because pretty much every PlayStation game has been on PC recently. So I just feel like, in that sort of sense, you're just better off getting a PC, because, there isn't really a discount for getting it on PlayStation, and maybe it's a little bit cheaper because they don't really have a Game Pass, which sucks. They have PlayStation Plus, but you get like a game trial, and honestly, I'm kind of disappointed in it. It sucks. Honestly, you're maybe just better off getting a PC if you can maybe get to the $1,000 range. I'd say you'd almost just be better off doing that. Now, $500 and $1,000 is, it's double the price, so it's sort of hard to justify it. But if you can, I feel like, you're getting a lot more bang for your buck with the PC, considering you're not just getting a gaming console. You are getting an entire, computer that you can do multiple things with in addition to playing games. But anyway, if you ignore the problem of the games being on PC, well, not the problem, but if you ignore the games being on PC, which it doesn't really bother me in that, because, a lot of people are just going to get a console no matter what, so they're either picking between Xbox Series and PS5. That's not the real problem. My real problem is how many of the games are still on PS4. So, uh, Spider-Man Miles Morales, the big PS5 launch title, launched on PS4 as well. It did not look nearly as good, but nonetheless, you could still play it on PS4. So, meaning, if you wanted to get the PS5 for that game and you had a PS4, there wasn't really a reason to get a PS5 at launch, other than the controller and I guess Astro's Playroom, which is is a really good game, but it's not like a system seller. And this continued, because one of the probably the PS5 games I was most excited for at the time, besides Spider-Man Miles Morales, which I barely have played, and that's sort of my fault. I probably have to force myself to play it. Is Gran Turismo 7, which also launched on PS4, and I know that, and there's a reason I bought this version of the game is because I wanted to play with a steering wheel, but my PS5 is hooked to my TV, and I need to use my desk. So I had a PS4 at the time I left on my desk. So I bought this version because, look, let's see if I can. Ooh. So you see it right there. It includes a download version for PS4. It's just sort of been disappointing. Now, I will admit, the PS4 version of this game looks a lot worse and it's a lot slower. I think it's running at like 30 FPS, so it's different. But that being said, though, I didn't have to buy the PS5. I could have just used the PS4. I can't remember if this has a PS4 Pro version. I guarantee you it does, though. But there was sort of no reason to. And it's still going on. Horizon Forbidden West, the DLC is exclusive to PS5. I don't know if it's on PC or not, but it's still on PS4. God of War Ragnarok is also on PS4. I don't know if there's DLC for that game, but it probably would be exclusive to PS5. So, like, I just don't... I sort of feel like the PS4 players sort of, they're getting everything, but, like, there's very little reason to own a PS5. Now, I think there are some exclusive games, and, it's been... and a lot of those were, like, 2022. I think Horizon Forbidden West was 2022. If I'm wrong, correct me. But... And, the adoption rate took a long time because these were hard to get for a long time, so they didn't want to alienate players, which is good. This is good. I understand they don't want to lock a game behind a console that almost nobody has. At the same time, if you bought one, you sort of feel like you didn't get your money's worth. And it's 2024. This has been out for almost 4 years now, and there's still games coming out on PS4. Or last gen, I'd say. They're not really like Sony games. I think Sony has sort of started to put most of their games only on PS5. But yeah, that first year was sort of rough. The only games I remember being like true PS5 exclusives were the Brawl All-Stars game or whatever the hell it's called. That no one played. Was that game? Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, which I do think is a game people would play. Is a big game. And Demon Souls, which I had no interest in, but people do have interest in that, so that's not fair. But that was about it. That's the only games I remember like immediately being exclusive. To tell you the truth, when a game is PS5 or next gen, that's the thing. I called it next gen. It's not even next gen. It's current gen. PS4 and Xbox One are last gen, but because it's still like this weird feeling. Honestly, I keep calling it next gen. And you can even go online and people are still calling it next gen. But it's not, it's current gen. And it's like, it still feels like it's not done yet. I just wanted to sort of go through, like, games. And like, I feel like, let me get my notes up here. Like, still a lot of them are coming out on previous gen systems. Alright, so what I wanted to say in this part of the video is true. I just didn't really have the right sources to back it up, and I didn't really explain it well because I wasn't looking at the right stuff. But I figured out how best to explain it. So, this is the list of the best-selling games in 2022. Now, if we ignore these games, because they're not on PlayStation at all, if we ignore Tears of the Kingdom, Starfield, Mario Bros. Wonder, Mario Kart 8, and I'm also just going to ignore Minecraft because I don't really think that's a fair thing to put in there just because it would account. It would be on PS4, but it's also on PS3 and Xbox 360 and every platform within the last 15 years is Minecraft, so I'm not going to count that. So if we take out these 5 games,
the only games really that aren't on PS4 are Spider-Man 2, Mortal Kombat 1, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and Final Fantasy 16. So if we take away, of the top 15 games that were sold last year that were available on PlayStation 5, only 4 of them were not available on PlayStation 4. There's still games coming out for PlayStation 4. As you can see, here's a list of the ones that haven't been released yet as of July 16th, 2024. 2K25, like all these games are still coming out. I don't know most of these games, to tell you the truth, but they're still coming out on PS4. And that's just sort of what I'm talking about. There's some games not even in 2025, 2026. I don't know. This is a remake, but I mean, in a lot of these like old games, I understand that why not port it to PS4? There's a big install base, but according to this, it looks like Civ 7 is coming out on PS4 in 2025. So at this point, the PlayStation 4 would be 12 years old, and it's still receiving games, which is good for the PS4. But if you have a PS5, I sort of feel like juked a little bit. So that was my whole point with this thing. I just didn't really explain it too well. Also, something I didn't realize until after I had already shot the segment as well and actually went to edit and grab footage off the PS5 of Astro's Playroom that you've been seeing or will see, is that I forgot that I had removed that game off of my internal drive, which is the one that you need to use, or the M.2 drive, to play PS5 games, onto the USB drive. Now, it was only about 10 gigabytes, and it was pretty fast. It only took about 2 minutes to write back. But most games are about 100 to 150, even 200 gigabytes sometimes. I don't see 200 gigabytes, but 100 to 150 gigabytes. And very often you will run out of space on this console, considering that the launch PS5s, the full fat PS5s, only have 825 gigabytes, and the Slims only have 1 terabyte. And the only way to actually get more PS5 storage is to use an M.2 SSD. You can use a USB hard drive, which I've done for all my PS4 games, and to store PlayStation 5 games, but you cannot play PlayStation 5 games off a USB. You have to do it on the internal storage or the M.2 slot. And while M.2 storage has come down a lot in price, it's still not cheap, like not as cheap as a USB drive. But yeah, I understand that games are big, but it's a problem. The storage size, you constantly run out of storage, and you're having to either delete games or move them to another drive or stuff like that. This is also a problem on the Xbox Series X and S. It's not just the PlayStation 5, but I just thought it was something I should make a note of in this video before I published it. But yeah, that was the whole point I was trying to make. So back to the original video.
More and more games are coming out on only current gen and then PC as well now. So it's not a really, I feel like now it's sort of done that, but it took 4 years. Like, it took 4 years of multi-console releases, and it's still not done, because Call of Duty, I think it's Black Ops 6, I can't remember the freaking number, is coming out on Xbox One and PS4. So it's not, so a lot of AAA games, including, I think, last year's Assassin's Creed, I believe, came out on both, but the new one this year is not. But it's coming out on Mac too. So I don't know, just Mac. I think it's also coming out on iPad. So if you have a freaking iPad, which is a lot of people, I feel like you can play it on there. So it doesn't really feel like a reason to get the console. Yeah. So this sort of left a sour taste in my mouth. Not all of it is just sort of the fault of Sony. Well, a lot of it is, but not of the fault of Sony. It's just that the adoption rate's been bad. And to tell you the truth, I don't think we're going to get exclusives like where there's like no PS4 and Xbox One games for a while, and that's just because Sony did a report not too long ago, and half of their online users are still on PS4. So you're pretty much eliminating. I mean, there's some people that probably have both, but you're pretty much eliminating half of your user base there, and I understand they don't want to do that. I think finally we're getting some games that are only on PS5 and next gen, but I feel like it took way too long to get to that point. I understand the adoption rate wasn't high, but like so So, do I regret buying this thing? Eh. If I had known what I known now, I probably wouldn't have bought it, because I have barely used this thing, and I probably would have used my PS4 Pro as much as I'm using this thing right now. I thought when I was getting this thing, I was gonna be like, another PS, like the new, like not a new PS4, like another PS4, where it had, in my opinion, PS4 had some of the best games of all time. Detroit Become Human, God of War, which I didn't really play much, but I did play a decent amount of it. Horizon Forbidden West, didn't play a lot of it, or not Horizon, shit, what's the game called again? Horizon Zero Dawn. It took me way too long to get to that point. Horizon Zero Dawn, Detroit Become Human, the first Spider-Man game, I did beat that game. It was a lot of good, heavy-hitting titles on PS4, and I was hoping that would continue with the PS5 with a bunch of exclusives. And it sort of did, as I said, but not really. And with PC pretty much getting most of the Sony exclusives, and some other things that, the PS5 has sort of just, not done for me, I feel a little, like, cheated. Like, I'm not going to sell this thing anymore because, well, there's one reason I'm pretty much not selling this thing anymore. GTA 6, because it's not launching on PC, and I ain't going to wait 2 years for them to port it to PC. I could play on Xbox, but if I'm going to sell this, I'd probably sell my Xbox as well. I'm probably going to play it on PS5. I feel like if of the two consoles, it makes more sense of a PlayStation game. So, yeah, this is going to get a lot of use next year for GTA 6, but pretty much everything else, I sort of just feel like I was ripped off a little bit. Like, I don't want to return it. Like I don't, like, regret buying it, but I probably wouldn't have bought it if I knew what I was getting into. Some other things I do want to talk about that I don't have, but if I want to give my opinion on, is PSVR 2, which people seem to like, but I feel like VR that's tied to hardware now is sort of like, I feel like with the MetaQuest consoles or headsets, I sort of feel like having to, physically link to a piece of hardware is just sort of like, I'm not really into it. I as much as the the graphics on it, and honestly, I've heard some really good reviews about PS5 or PSVR 2. I don't know many exclusive games for it, and it also costs more than the console. It's $550, which is ridiculous. It's a good headset from what I've heard, but especially with the eye tracking. But I don't know. I just don't really see myself being interested in it more. I find myself maybe much more interested in, like, getting a MetaQuest 3 versus a PSVR 2. I actually did have the original PSVR, and it did have some good exclusives on it that were only on PSVR, even though it was, like, way behind everything else. But I mean, it was a PS4 running it, so I can't really look too much for that. Next thing I don't have is the PS Portal. There's a reason I didn't buy that. I don't really. There's too much hate on it, but at the same time, it is a really stupid product, because I don't really see the advantage of that over just using a PS5 controller on a phone, other than it's just one unit, which is nice. And I think, honestly, if it was like $100, even like $120, $130, I don't think I'd have a problem with it, because it is nice to have a dedicated thing you just carry around. You don't have to carry around a stupid controller, clip, and all that stuff. But it's $200. It doesn't have cell service. It doesn't play any games by itself. It's just a remote for your PS5, split in half with a screen in the middle that needs Wi-Fi. And I remember too, it didn't even work on certain Wi-Fi networks because it didn't have a web browser, so it couldn't do like a sign-in page. $200, ladies and gentlemen. So those are the other two, accessories I want to talk about. I will admit though, when it went from going from one gen to the next gen, the PS5 did actually feel like another console, because the operating system was completely different. Whereas on Xbox, it is the exact same interface as Xbox One. It's a little bit different because there's themes, but it's pretty much the same interface, and that's annoying. Not gonna lie, because it sort of just felt like I bought an Xbox One X2. Didn't really feel like I was buying a next gen console. But Xbox has Game Pass, which is awesome. This doesn't. That sucks. It really does, because honestly, it's made me use that console more than this one, despite the fact I have a PC. because I just like the idea of being able to, oh, here's a game, I can download it, boom. Would I recommend anyone buy a PS5 now? Why not at this point? There's enough games on it to where I feel like now you'd be getting your money's worth, but I still feel cheated by it. But what I'd also recommend is if you want, for a lot of games, if you want to, you know, try a lot of the Sony exclusive games, is just buying a PS4 or PS4 Pro off of like Marketplace. There's a lot of them that are like less than $100, and you can get a lot of good, you know, cheap PS4 games. And, you know, if you want to play the sequels, then, you know, maybe consider getting a PS5. But again, a lot of the sequels are on PS4 anyway. So honestly, if you, you know, if you find a good used PS4, you know, you had Xbox One last generation, I'd say go for it. And honestly, if you still have a PS4, you know, maybe, you know, unless there's some games you really want, or, you know, you really care about the performance, yeah, because I haven't played PS4 in a while. The performance may be pretty bad. But honestly, though, you may just, you know, if you want to just save some money towards, you know, get maybe a PC or something else. Now, if you want to play GTA 6, you're probably going to need to get an next-gen console, and I'd probably recommend getting the PS5, especially if you have anything else. But, yeah, no, honestly, PS4 has been a pretty good console to have. Sorry this sort of went off the rails. I may have to make some corrections in the edit if you ever see, like, any notes or something like that. That's because I made some corrections. But, yeah, let me know your thoughts on the PS5 and, you know, the situation I talked about. If I missed anything, if there's something I did wrong, just let me know in the comments. Also, I know I haven't made a video in a long time. I have 2 videos I want to make planned for a fact I know I want to make, but time needs to pass before I make those, because one of them is about electric cars, and I want to wait till 1 year ownership, because yeah, I have an electric car, 1 year ownership of that car before I start talking about, you know, numbers, so I have, you know, a bit of evidence behind me. And I want to make a retrospect on the Nintendo Switch, but I don't want to do it yet because I feel like we're so close to the next gen console that I don't want to, you know, make it yet. I'm like writing the notes for it so that when we get close, I only have to basically, you know, add the games that come out in the meantime, and then just shoot it, and then it'll be done. But I don't want to make that video yet. Let me know what you want to see. I also want to I do want to start an aviation channel for aviation stuff, since I'm a pilot. But I don't want to do it on this channel because I feel like it's such a departure, where I feel like the other stuff I can sort of, you know, blend into here, but that I feel like is so different. So yeah, I'll probably put a link to that in the description. And also, I'll probably start live streaming again. I want to probably do it on YouTube, but I think Twitch is better for the viewership, so I'll probably do both, to tell you the truth. So just follow me on Twitch and stay subscribed here for live streams. So that'll do it, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.